Welcome and thank you very much for joining. Today we're going to break down an article in Teen Vogue, the magazine, that actually endorses socialism. And the name of the article is "The Democratic Socialists of America Can Mobilize Generation Zers like me." So it is written by a 70-year-old student, and you could say, okay, who cares? Why argue with someone who is straight after high school or in high school? You probably have something better to do. But the thing is, Teen Vogue considered this something like an editorial. So its Twitter account is followed by 3 million people, and it tells us something about the culture. So when a magazine, which at least in its origins, the idea was how to be cool, now the point is how to be cool is be a socialist, I think it's worth having a look at it. And with me, I have Mark. Mark, what's your initial thought? Did you expect when you first came along Teen Vogue, whenever that was, to one day see this magazine basically saying that the cool thing, the fashion item of today is socialism?
It's not so surprising to me. If most of the kids today go to public schools, they're going to get the statist version of history, which, according to the statists, is the state saves the day from pesky capitalist rape and pillaging, which would ordinarily go on if it weren't for the state holding back our animal instincts. So it's not surprising to me that a majority of kids in that age group, I think now 51% or so, actually sympathize with socialism. They've been told all their lives from K through 12 that capitalism is bad.
And in a way, as you said, it makes sense. So we wouldn't say, oh, why is it then in a country, let's say, where education is mostly religious, that kids turn out to be religious? Of course, we'd expect some kids that at least would have this rebellious thing that, oh, whatever I'm taught by the powers to be, maybe I should question it. But this we are not there with most kids. But let's go through the article, and we're going to comment on the most interesting parts with Mark. So the article begins. Some of the most defining life experiences that help develop political consciousness take place when we are adolescents. Senator Bernie Sanders engaged in solidarity organizing with Koreans in high school during the war. Angela Davis grew up surrounded by civil rights organizers, and so on. So interestingly here, so she says that the two names she drops as these, let's say, symbols of what politics mean to her is, of course, Bernie Sanders and Angela Davis. So most of you probably know Bernie. Now, she says that he was part of a solidarity campaign during the Korean War. This is not even factually wrong, but I wonder, what does she mean would be a solidarity campaign during the Korean War? So in favor of whom? Probably not of the South Koreans, because that's not the cool thing if you're on the left. So I wonder whether she means that a solidarity campaign to the North, and whether there's something to it on that. But she's factually wrong anyway, because Bernie was just helping. He was basically sending food to kids that had lost their family due to the war. So there wasn't something political there. But Angela Davis is something very interesting. So Angela Davis, for those of you who don't know her, is someone who has sanctioned basically every horrible regime of the last 50 years which has anything to do with the left. So she's someone who went to East Germany and she left a flower to the Berlin Wall, but not in order to pay homage to the people who died there trying to escape, but to pay homage to one East German guard who died in an altercation with some people who tried to run for freedom. Angela Davis received the Lenin Prize from Soviet Union. Now, if you know anything about Soviet Union, to give you the Lenin Prize, you must have done something to earn it. Of course, she was in favor of the relationships, of good relationships with Cuba. She was a dear friend of Fidel Castro. And when some people asked her to, look, you've done all that stuff for prisoners in the UK, for political prisoners, can you please support political prisoners also in Soviet Union or in Czechoslovakia, in Eastern Europe? She said, no, they got what they deserve. So from the very beginning, we see that if you're a democratic socialist, the cool thing is you get inspiration from Bernie, although you get your facts wrong, but whatever, and someone who is an iconic movement of the American communist movement, but also, of course, of black activism, but with a very dubious past. So already from the beginning, I think, Mark, we see where this is going.
Yeah, she certainly points out some very despicable folks there. But what this author is right about is around adolescence is the time I think people start really searching for philosophical meaning. And so it's no surprise that, I mean, I became sort of an activist in my teens as well, but the activism was definitely spurred on by the school that I went to, and it was guided by a lot of the curriculum that I was learning, which sort of shaped my ideas about the way the world was. So it's no surprise that, you know, you'll find passionate teenagers seeking truth. It's probably that, and I can't think of any other age actually in a human being's life when they're searching as passionately for truth, unless they're an objectivist, in which case it's an ongoing project.
I sympathize with that. Yeah. Also, my political reawakening, of course, towards the left was at the tender age of 15. So let's continue. Then she says what you said earlier. Polling shows that Gen Z adults aged 18 to 24 already have a more positive view of socialism than of capitalism, presumably because our age group has also experienced the worst of late-stage American capitalism. End quote. Could it be because her age group, all they've been taught by their teachers and the culture around them is that socialism is cool and capitalism is bad? And could it be that the reason they have these views is because they don't have the independent thinking? They haven't been taught how to think independently. So it would take someone of almost a heroic intellectual status to say, wait a minute, is all these things I'm bombarded with, is there any way I should question them?
Yeah, the effects of late stage capitalism, which means they have a computer in their hands, they have 3 hots and a cot every single day, they live in relative comfort. It seems to me that you would know this better than I, since you were immersed in the Marxist world, but it seems to me that it's the bourgeois, it's the upper class that ends up populating the intellectual side of the Marxist movement. I think because there's a certain, I think even at that young age, a sense of guilt for being comfortable. And, you know, since a kid is searching for meaning and searching for ideas and ethics, the ethics that's given to them is altruism. And why would they not feel a sense of idealism for something that lifts up the poor? And why would they not feel guilty for being wealthy? And so I think it's complicated. Sure, they're getting indoctrinated from an early age, but they also live in relative comfort. The fact that this person says we experience late stage capitalism as if it's a bad thing, I think it's some implicit, the implication is they're rich and other people are poor, and that's terrible.
And yeah, you're perfectly right, particularly with the new left. The protagonists were always the middle classes, from the United States to Europe, to the Paris Rebellion in '68, for example. It was mostly the old orthodox, let's say, Stalinist parties that had the working class. But the new left was never comfortable, and they were always in conflict, the one with the other. And in Italy, for example, you had the situation where militias of the Communist Party would go and break occupations in the university, and basically they were beating the kids and say, go work in a factory because you have no idea what you're talking about. But now with the complete prevailing of the new left, it's, as you said, it's mostly kids from a relatively comfortable background. But let's see what our friend says later. The expansion of the academic industrial complex and the resulting student and debt crisis have crushed our socioeconomic mobility. By the way, I'm with you on that. I think the industry that is academia is really a ripoff to the majority of students, and maybe not for the reasons our friend thinks, but she's right. 48% of workers earning the federal minimum wage or below are 16 to 24 years old. And that wage hasn't increased since I was 5 years old. So basically, Mark, here she's challenging you. She says, no, we are the proletariats of the day. We are the ones who get minimum wage. We are the ones who get not enough money. So why do you say we are well off?
Well, because they have alternative means of support. You know, that the 15 to 24-year-olds are likely living at home, likely going to college, likely being supported by their parents. And that's another thing that I think inspires the socialists. I don't think kids today really understand what it is to suffer, to I don't want to say suffer, but to work and sweat and earn a buck. They don't really know where that material well-being comes from. So they could work at a minimum wage job. It's not like they have to support themselves. It's spending money, it's pocket money because their parents are taking care of the rest. That's predominantly who occupies the minimum wage world, right? We have the super young 15 to 24 who are students, and we have the retired people who just want to supplement their fixed income. And very few people stay in a minimum wage job for good. Most 98% or something, is a huge number, move out of that world. So she's not a proletariat in the sense that I think a real Marxist would mean it.
Definitely. And also, why not think beyond the current stage of higher education? So if we said to these students, for example, would you be in favor of startups as universities? Or would you be in favor of things like the Objectivist Academic Center? Or if you study economics, you go to Mises.org. Basically, a huge amount of economic knowledge is out there for free. But of course, I wouldn't be in favor of that. They would say, no, this is bad things. This is capitalism infiltrating universities. So that's why they're stuck with this industrial educational complex, as he calls it. And then we have watched capitalism fail time and again, having experienced two of the country's worst recessions, 2008 and again in 2020. Now, 2008, I would understand that it needs some knowledge of something like economics to understand that happened. Okay, I get that. 2020, how is it related to capitalism? You have literally the government telling you you're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to leave the house. How on earth can someone see 2020 and say this is a crisis of capitalism? Capitalism gave you a vaccine before you even knew that you needed it. Moderna had the vaccine ready when the World Health Organization thought that it's not possible for the virus to go from human to human. So, but for our friend, 2008 to 2020 are a result of the fail of capitalism.
Yeah, the I hate capitalism perspective is really, really hard. It's really hard to take those glasses off once you've put them on. So even when it's straight out, when it's so clear that the government is the one that's shutting down industry and killing the economy, these folks are willing to just put on the blinders and say, no, I'm sticking with my perspective. It's capitalism. Capitalism's doing it. Yeah, it's a shame.
And see though the U-turns is gonna do in a while. Okay. And by the way, I'm skipping some parts. In 2020, youth unemployment remained elevated far above the rate for the general population because young workers are concentrated in impacted industries such as retail, hospitality, and the precarious gig economy. So I also wanted to make a comment here related to the previous thing. And by the way, this is true. So when you are stuck in a job that sucks, it's mostly because no one else is going to give you a better job because they don't appreciate your productive capacity at that stage. And I've experienced it. I was literally sweeping roads and I was cleaning the vomit from toilets from students who were partying on a Saturday night. Why? Because at that stage, that's the best I could get. I'm very thankful I managed to do these jobs because otherwise I wouldn't be able to fund my studies in the UK. But saying that this is the problem of the system, of course, I would like back then to be invited to give speeches to 1,000 people, but the best I could do was clean toilets. But that's what my life was back then. Why should I blame the one person who said, okay, I'll hire you even if it is to clean toilets? And why not say, okay, look, at that stage, that's what I had to offer you. That's what you had to offer me. And we were both, in a way, it was a win-win, although the job sucked.
Yeah, but see, that's the first world problem. They get everything they want instantaneously. They don't even know how to delay gratification. So the idea of going through a process to get somewhere, it seems like a foreign concept to them.
And now she brings again the pandemic. So notice though now the U-turn. Going to work, now she talks about after the lockdowns, going to work meant risking my life to perform labor because the ruling class had decided that dead frontline workers were just the collateral damage of their profit-motivated reopening. So notice, in the previous paragraph, capitalism sucks because of the crisis of 2020, and capitalism sucks because many of the people who couldn't work were young people. Literally, within a couple of paragraphs. And then they send us back to work, basically as sacrificial animals for the greed of profit of capitalism. So how can someone, even if you are young, even if you are not particularly into independent thinking, how can you not see this? How can you not see in the same article, I've written two things that are completely contradictory.
Well, yeah, she's saying on the one hand, capitalism sucks because it unemploys me. On the other hand, it sucks because it employs me. It's a no-win situation.
And again, people, I don't want you please to perceive this as we are, quote, destroying this young person. It takes guts to write an op-ed and put yourself out there. So I have respect for that. But I haven't got respect for what is in the article. And I haven't got respect for Teen Vogue that considers that this is worthy of an opinion that needs to be, that is the hot thing of the day. Anyway, by the way, the issue that we were risking our life to perform labor. But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on that. Okay.
But the beautiful thing about a free market system is you don't have to do that. It's not like the socialist system that forces you to do it for the good of the community. You don't have to do it. You should be weighing the alternatives in your life. And if the alternatives are such that you can take the risk, then by all means, why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't you be free to do that?
Yeah. If you consider that still the risk is too high, you can stay home, but you cannot expect that you can have it both ways. I can stay home and someone has to provide for me. And by the way, that system that provides for the people who are actually providing for me, I'm gonna try to destroy their productive endeavor. Then I recognize capitalism. Then she moves to the environment. I recognize capitalism as the root cause of the climate crisis and realized that the environmental justice for which I was fighting posed a threat to capitalism's very existence as a system of profit and exploitation. My friend, I agree with you here that indeed the environmental system and the environmental justice movement and capitalism cannot be on the same side. So I wish capitalists would understand it. But you said that it poses a threat to capitalism. You said, the author says that the environmental movement poses a threat to capitalism. Let me add, it also poses a threat to the lives of billions of people who suffer from energy poverty, from millions of people who die from indoor pollution. So for all these people, most of whom probably our friend hasn't got the knowledge to understand their situation, most of these people would be severely hurt if her ideas would prevail, which unfortunately they are prevailing. So I would say if you care about environmental justice, you should support capitalism, you should support more freedom for these people.
Well, I would just question the claim of environmental justice. I don't think there is such a thing. Justice pertains to people and it pertains to human interaction, not the environment. And if you look at the way things are going, the initial stages of gaining the type of productivity that makes us an industrial power are dirty. That's certainly true. But the wealthier we get, the less resources we use. The industrialization of farming went and it enabled us as a people to go from 80% of the population engaging in farming with huge use of resources to less than 1% of the population doing farming with much less land. And that goes for energy, that goes for every resource that we use. The wealthier we are, the less we need of it. The wealthier we are, the cleaner we become. Look, Europe was deforested in the process of becoming advanced. America was deforested in the process of becoming advanced. That process was very complicated, but now America has more trees and forests than it did 125 years ago, and Europe is reforesting. You have to be wealthy to do that stuff, and you can't be wealthy without capitalism.
But you bring facts to the discussion, and who has time for that? Anyway, then we proceed. Looking at the world through the lens of class conflict and historical materialism has made everything I had never been able to explain make sense. By the way, I'm very curious what makes sense through class conflict and historical materialism, but we never find out. So many of my questions can be answered. What continues to mystify me is how anyone my age can still have complete faith in capitalism, a system that is driving our planet to literal inhabitability. So my question is, when was our planet more inhabitable? Was it when people were dying very young from famines, from cold, from diseases? Was it the time where you would go outside in a town? I remember a tour guide in Edinburgh telling me, if I would teleport you, as you are now, if I would teleport you 200 years ago, 300 years ago, the moment you'd come out of the time capsule, you'd immediately faint. Because he said you wouldn't be able to stand the smell. Our bodies get used to smell. So back then they didn't consider it bad smell, but today you wouldn't be able to stand it for 2 minutes. But again, according to a leftist, this was the time where the planet was habitable. And now that the planet can support 7 billion people, apparently it's inhabitable.
You know what I find funny about that? There's a line in a Shakespeare play, Romeo and Juliet, where I think Juliet says, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Well, she's talking about, the Capulets and the Montagues and what difference does it make that our names are like this? It shouldn't cause conflict. But the real reference was to a theater that was on the Thames along with the Globe. There was a theater called The Rose, and The Rose was next to a set of public toilets that was on the bank of the Thames, which basically was a long line of benches with holes in them that people could just go to and relieve themselves on the banks of the Thames. And of course, that raw sewage would wash up onto the shores of the Thames right next to the Rose. And even going back just to Elizabethan times, you would find yourself in a shockingly abusive, abrasive, and dirty world. Remember, they used to wear rabbit skins around as cloaks around their garments because they couldn't wash the wool that they made their clothes with because it would shrink. So they would clean it with urine sometimes, but they would become lice infested. They would put rabbit skins to attract the lice and then shake the lice out of their windows onto the streets, where they also threw their garbage and sewage, by the way. So yeah, it's a much better place than it was then. And kids who live in relative comfort today in America don't have that context.
So previously you brought in facts, now you bring in history. Both are areas where probably more work should be done at the schools. Anyway, so human survival, then she says, will depend on revolution. And I can't help myself from saying that this is true, because whenever that type of revolution that is supported, human life was either intolerable or virtually impossible, such as for the millions of people who perished under regimes supporting the ideas that she had. But anyway, going back to the things that you mentioned, we have to survive floods, heat waves, forest fires, and air pollution. Watch our homes sink underwater, the collapse of food supply chains, and power grids that give out. Literally, now she has no idea what she's talking about. I'm really sorry about that, but facts of reality are against her. Pollution today in the West is immeasurably better, not from the 19th century, even from the 80s. Go to the Environmental Protection Agency, which is not a free market think tank, is one of the sources where normally you would go to find this type of stuff. And go, our friends, and compare pollution days where pollution was intolerable in New York in the 80s versus today. You will be surprised. Or she talks about floods. if you see the victims of floods or generally the victims from environmental disasters, they have gone down radically. So what you're saying is wrong. It's factually wrong. There's no other way to. Food supply chains. Food supply chains have never been more secure than today. Talk about food supply chains when we had the famine. So I don't know. So seriously, Mark, like a Googling could have solved these issues.
Yeah, she's not interested in that though. She's got an ideal, and that's what she's going to trumpet that ideal irrespective of the fact, because it sounds good. It sounds good to her, not to me, but to her.
And again, I feel bad for this. It's like, oh, what you are mansplaining to a 17-year-old.
Yes,
like
good. She put herself out there. She's got to take her shots. It's good for her.
Okay. Sorry, but I can't help it. Social media exposes us to new ideas that antagonize our current belief system. Not really. I would say mostly the social media prevents you from coming to antagonistic point of view, but okay, technically you are right. But usually when leftists talk about antagonistic point of view, they mean, well, some of us are socialists, but then we come to the point of view of other who are first radical feminists and then socialists, and then we come across the ideas of, I don't know, Fidel Castro, and you know, the one antagonizes the other. That's the battle of ideas that she's talking about. Okay, as we reach towards the end. Now she goes to the Black Lives Matter movement. Thanks to the work of young Black, indigenous, and people of color, I think this means organizers, we also understand that the struggles to end white supremacy and capitalism are intertwined. First of all, where is white supremacy? Is there any proof that there is one? We are in a society where last year you could lose your job for liking a comment on social media that criticizes BLM. The most secure way to have a career suicide is to raise any questions about intersectionality, about diversity and all that stuff. But in the mind of that student, we live in white supremacy. So again, this sounds religious to me. This is what I'm taught. So white supremacy.
Well, I think Marxists do one thing very well. They find the contradictions in the system and the practices of the system, and they exploit those contradictions to promote their agenda. And so they see that we're supposedly a system based on individual rights, but we had cultural racism, and that also fomented legal racism. And so they take that contradiction and they use it to promote Marxism as the solution to this flawed system, which they say is inherently flawed.
And to finish off, we can shift the tide in favor of socialism, the only system that will guarantee us a livable planet and life unburdened from economic exploitation, crushing debt, and racial castes. So regarding the livable planet, I suggest you check the environmental records of non-capitalist countries. Of course, you're going to find one country with impeccable record, which is Cuba. And this is because when you don't even have the resources to run cars and you go back to a pre-industrial society, your environmental record is going to be good, but the record of the life of the people is not going to be good. And when it comes to debt, please go and check Greece and debt country, and the debt crisis, and go and check the policies of Greece and whether you would like them. I'm sure you would. The state spending money like there's no tomorrow. So somehow, we don't know how exactly, Mark, but with socialism, there's going to be no exploitation, no pollution of the planet, no debt, and everyone's going to be rich. How? Somehow.
Well, there's certainly nothing in reality that shows us that. You're right. All the socialist, quote unquote, countries, or countries that have openly embraced socialism are in the red. There's a great deal of contention. I mean, any centralized system is going to cause tensions between the population because they're going to be fighting for the spoils in the political arena. So there's never such a thing as no socioeconomic tension with the people in such a system, because they need to get favors from the government in order to survive. And they're certainly the dirtiest places on earth. China right now has advanced because it's embraced some capitalist notions, but to the extent that it's still centralized, it does a lot of bad things to the environment.
Anyway,
it's the dirtiest country on the planet.
Then there's something about the fascist administration in the United States. Okay, I'm not going to even mention. I don't think this even. Then we hear something about Palestine. Again, I'm sure these people know everything about the Israeli-Arab conflict. They know the history. They know the background. It's not like they just know some slogans. But here's the last part, the thing I want to finish with. From the moment we started school, members of Generation Z have been told that we would be the ones to save humanity from our current overwhelming conditions. Again, unfortunately, our friend is right. This is true. And same to those who did so. Same to those who went to Greta Thunberg and said, tell us what to do. Same to those who went to Greta and says, we've left you down. We've destroyed the future generation. So please beat us. Please tell us how horrible we are. Please, we're going to clap you when you tell us how horrible a job we've done. How low your self-esteem and your self-respect has to be lectured by someone for hours about how you've screwed their future, and then just go and say, yeah, you're right. So this is what created this attitude.
Yeah, I think we've created a generation of narcissists. Their parents have in its essence told them that, they know more than them. And is that from Rousseau? Didn't Rousseau believe that civilization trained something out of you that you had as a child, some essential part of you that you no longer have as an adult? And many adults, I think, buy that and think that their kids are a lot smarter than them, a lot more world weary. Well, guess what? They're not. They don't have the context. It's your responsibility to guide them. So stop ceding your adulthood and moral authority to a 17-year-old kid. They simply don't have the context to shoulder that burden. And you know what? I think it's psychologically destructive. I don't think kids should be burdened with this kind of stuff at 17. Yes, they should be looking for ideas. They should be searching out what's right and what's good. They should be establishing a moral code for themselves. But taking on the responsibility of saving the world is grandiose. You won't save the world.
And not at 17, even earlier. I mean, this catechism starts from school. And literally the last sentence. The future belongs to young people, but there is no future for us under capitalism. I will add that there is no future for capitalism under people with your views. And also, I would say, for some capitalists, they don't deserve anything better. So the people who run Teen Vogue, the people who advertise in Teen Vogue, to all these people, whatever you have coming your way, you fully deserve it. And in a way, I'm annoyed that I'm even defending you, but I have to because I have principles, but you don't deserve anything better.
Yeah, they're going to get what they've been praying for. And there's an expression for that. Be careful what you wish for.
Or as Ran would put it, brothers, you've asked for it. But so that we're not only complaining, let's finish with what should be the reaction to that. And I think you definitely mentioned idealism. What is the freedom movement offering to the young generation? Statistics, free trade is going to do this. No, that doesn't set your heart on fire. What sets your heart on fire is principles, ideals, heroism. So that's why I think Objectivism is the only movement that is fit for the purpose to oppose these things, because it doesn't just say you're wrong, and it doesn't just say you're wrong because these statistics, which are important, but also it offers a vision of life. It offers a vision for yourself, how you can be a hero, not by running only to the barricades, although sometimes this is necessary, but via production, by chasing a good life. So this is the only answer. The answer is not the typical conservative, but the Cuba, their trade went down 86% under Castro. No, that's not gonna change their mind.
Yeah, I agree that what her vision has is a romantic vision of being a savior. And what the liberalism that we are a part of and the freedom movement needs is that same kind of heroism, that you are a savior indeed. You're the savior of your own life, of your own values, and when you start there, it changes the world. So we definitely need that romantic vision, and Rand provided it, thank God, and we can continue to carry that banner. Excellent.
So I think we went a bit over time, but it was worth it. I have to say, Mark, I enjoyed this episode. Again, not because we proved someone who is 17 that person is wrong, but these ideas are everywhere, and these ideas have to be opposed because they're so mainstream that who could have told that Vogue would be where you would see these things? But anyway, I'm repeating myself. Okay, coming up today on HBTV, Harry Binswanger on a topic called "Vaccinate Yourself Intellectually." So Harry's going to talk about. Anyway, you're going to figure out just from the title, and if you see the thumbnail, this should persuade you that you should join. It's going to be one of the very interesting HBTV episodes. And tomorrow on the Daily Objective, we have a parenting Q&A with Lisa Van Dam. Razi, does this mean that people can send questions in advance? Do people send questions via Super Chat? How is this working? I assume you would... we're going to tell us. Okay, a couple of Super Chats. So Luis says, enjoying the history lesson. Thank you, Luis. Robert says, objectivists offer them, your life is an end in itself. Amen. Yes. And Razi is typing something. Member can send questions in advance. So another advantage of being a member of the Android Center UK, send us your questions in advance, either for Harry, for every Monday on HBTV, or send us the question either to me or to Razi or to the WhatsApp group for Lisa. Tomorrow, Yaron is debating a prominent Scottish libertarian, I think he's Scottish, on the issue of libertarianism, good or bad. And we will leave you with the words of Robert, who said, thank you for the super chat. You're so right. This is a battle of ideas. And this is a battle which we have to fight, and we're fit to fight as opposed to most other people on, quote, our side of the argument. Mark, thank you so much. We're going to be for a while, not for so long, but for a while on Clubhouse to listen to your comments and your thoughts. Thank you very much from us. Have a good evening or a good day. Bye-bye.